Hey everyone, let's learn some basics of Git. Git is a tool created by Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux operating system. It helps you to track changes in your files and revert them back if needed. So it does all that by taking a snapshot of your source code. Now the first thing is to install Git from its official website, which is git-scm.com, and going to its download page. Now, once you're in the download section, you can choose the installer based on your operating system. Now, I'm using Windows, so I'll choose Windows installer. And it should start downloading automatically. We will wait for the download to finish, but I will just fast forward it. Now the download is finished, we can now run the installer. You see, it is just like installing any other application. I am keeping all the installer setting to default, pretty basic stuff. We are now installing it and it should take a couple of seconds to finish the installation. So we will wait till our installation is complete. Once it is finished, we can now exit the installer and let's verify our Git installation by going to command prompt. You can use terminal if you are using macOS. I am using Windows, so I will use command prompt and I will enter command git --version. And it has returned Git version installed on our system. We now have Git up and running, so let's learn it in more detail. For this tutorial, I have set up a very basic project called Git intro. Now currently this project has two files, feature1.txt and feature2.txt. Very simple plain text files. To activate Git in this project, we will use a command called git init. Let's try that out. Git init, press enter. You see we have initialized empty Git repository. You must have noticed files in Visual Studio Code has turned green. This is because Visual Studio Code has inbuilt support for Git. How cool is that? Let's learn another command, which is git status. We'll be using git status a lot. It helps you to see changes in your Git repository. Git status, and there we go. You can see there are two untracked files in our Git repository, feature1.txt and feature2.txt. Now Git doesn't track all the files by default. We will have to tell Git the files which we want to track. Before we proceed further, let's understand states of files in Git. By default, all the new files goes into untracked state. We just saw our two files, feature1.txt and feature2.txt, were labeled as untracked files. Now to take the snapshot of our source code, we will have to commit our changes. And committing the changes, it's a two-stage process. We will have to first stage all our changes and send our files into staging state. We do this by using command git add. Once our files are in staging area, which means we have finished doing all our changes and now we are ready to commit our code. Now to commit our changes, we will use command git commit -m followed by a useful message. And once we have committed our code, it means we have now a snapshot of our source code and we can revert back at any point of time. Once we modify our files from here, it directly goes to modified state, which means this file has been committed before, but now it has been modified. Now to commit changes again, it's a two-stage process. We will first send our changes to staging area and from there we will commit our code. Now we are done with the basic concepts. Let's jump into the project. Right now our project has two untracked files, feature1.txt and feature2.txt. So let's add these files into our staging area, and we do that by using command git add. In this case, git add feature1.txt. With this, we have added one file to our staging area. But if you have lots of files, it might be a headache for you to add each files like this. So we will use a shortcut with git add command. We will use git add followed by a dot. And it will include all the new files or modified files into staging area. And now let's run command git status again, and we see Git is tracking these files and these are ready to be committed into our next snapshot. Before that, let's create another file and we call this file .secret, and this is a top secret file. This can be your password, this can be your environment variables, it can be anything, and we don't want to share it with Git. One problem with our previous approach was that if we use command git add followed by a period, it will include everything into the Git staging area. And we don't want to share our .secret file with Git. To solve this problem, we will use a magic file called .gitignore. And what this file will do, it will tell Git to ignore all the files listed here. So we will create this file .gitignore. And if we run git status now, we see true untracked files .secret and .gitignore. Now we will add .secret to our list of ignored files. And let's check what happens if we run command git status. You see .secret file has been completely ignored. We can add .gitignore to our staging area. Now we are ready to create our first commit. We do that by using command git commit -m followed by a useful message describing what has changed. In this case, I will use a simple message. This is our first commit. Once we run this command, we now have our first commit, which means we can now revert our source code at this stage at any point of time. Now if we run git status, we see there are no changes or new files since its last commit. Let's modify our files and see what happens. I will just go to feature1.txt and add some random text. Let's say function1. It can be anything depending on your source code. Now let's save this file and check our Git repository with git status. There we go. Git has labeled this file as modified, which means it has been changed since its last commit. Let's create another commit for this change. Again, it's a two-step process. We first add our modified files into staging area and then we can commit our changes. Let's run git add feature1.txt and now followed by a git commit command. In this case, GIT commit -m followed by a helpful message. New function added to feature1. There we go. We now have our second commit. It was that easy. Just like that, you can add features in your source code, you can modify files and create a commit at once so that if anything goes wrong, you can still revert back to original working state. And you will also have a good idea of how your source code evolved. Now let's try that one more time. This time we modify feature to .txt. We add some random text here and then we run git status to check the changes. We see it has been modified and then we add this file to staging area using the command git add followed by a file name, and once it is in the staging area, we are now ready to create our next commit using command git commit -m followed by a message. At this point, we now have multiple commits. Let's check them out using command git log. With this command, we can now see all our commits we have made in past. It has returned with the message we provided to give us an idea of what changes were made in each commit. If you have followed along till this point, you must have got a pretty good idea about Git and how to use it. You can now integrate Git in your own projects. This covers the basics of using Git. In the next video, we will talk about more advanced stuff like branching and reverting back to any changes. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to stay tuned.